growing. Willie Corbin was still going to school, too. I want to tell you about that Willie. He was the biggest rascal in our community when he was younger. He used to get himself in all kinds of trouble. Folks thought that he never would amount to anything, but most likely end up in some jail or something. Me? I knew that Willie wasn't really bad. He just liked to have fun, that was all. But that all changed when Willie decided he'd rather spend his future in heaven than hell. This happened way back after my Uncle Nat preached his first sermon in our church. He had just been asked to be our new minister. Willie straightened himself right around and never did go back to his wild ways. I figured if God could make such a change in the likes of Willie Corbin, then he ought to be able to handle almost anyone. Anyway, Willie about had his mind made up that God wanted him to be a missionary. Willie found studying rather hard, but one had to admire him. He kept plugging away at it, determined to prepare himself for some kind of work with heathen people somewhere. Those were the 3 fellows from my old country school who were still hanging in there. Then there were 4 older guys from town. We all hung around together, but I spent most of the time with my old buddies, mostly, I guess, because they were also from our small church. A couple of the town fellows were a little wild, according to Aunt Lou, and though she didn't forbid me to see them or anything like that, still she did prefer me to make close friends with the church young folks. I didn't complain. I liked the church kids, and we had us a lot of fun with our corn roasting, sleigh riding, skating on the pond and such. It seemed hard to believe that me and Pixie, my little dog, had already been 2 years with Aunt Lou and Uncle Nat in town. We didn't stay in town all the time. Whenever the weather was good, and as I said, it was good most of the time that fall, we went out to the farm for the weekend to spend time with Grandpa, Uncle Charlie, and Gramps, who batched together there. It would have been hard put to try to say which place I liked best. While I was in town during the week, I counted the days till the weekend when I could get back out on the farm again and chop some wood or go to the pasture for Bossy, the milk cow I had milked so many times myself. I even enjoyed the squealing and grunting of the pigs as I sloshed the slop into the troughs. The chickens seemed to sort of sing their clucking when I poured out their water and grain. Then, as soon as Sunday night came around, I found myself hardly able to wait to get back to town and Aunt Lou and Uncle Nat again. I wondered what Aunt Lou would fix for Sunday dinner, and if she'd saved a piece of pie or an apple dumpling for me. I wondered if Uncle Nat had been called out on some sick call, and I hadn't been there to harness Dobbin for him. I thought of all kinds of things that I wanted to ask them or tell them when I got back. You'd think I'd been gone for days the way I chomped to get back again. The truth was, I'd just seen both of them at the church service that very morning. So that was the way I spent the fall, going back and forth, and trying to grab the best of 2 worlds with both hands, so to speak. I would have tired myself plumb out if it hadn't been such a long, lazy-feeling kind of fall. Even after every lick of work was done, we still had us lots of good weather for catching up on just loafing around. Only one thing wrong with that kind of weather. It sure made it hard to concentrate on studying. I had to take myself in hand every other day, it seemed, and just make myself sit down and study. And then another strange thing happened. Miss Williams, a maiden lady who had been teaching in our school for almost forever, went and threw in a surprise that nearly rocked the whole community. She was getting married, she said, just like that. Now, no one in his right mind ever picked Miss Williams for the marrying kind. I mean, why would you? She had lived for years and years all alone and looked like she was enjoying it, and then, real sudden-like, she says she is getting married, to a sweetheart of some 37 years, she says. Now, no one in the town knew anything at all about this fella. We'd never even heard of him. But that didn't stop Miss Williams any. She was quitting, she said, and she never gave notice or anything. Just packed up her books and her bags and took the train back to some eastern city to marry this man. Well, that left us without a teacher. There weren't none of us sitting around grieving much, not even me who liked school. Jack Barry didn't try to hide his enthusiasm. He just whooped right out. A couple of the girls gave him a real cross look, but he didn't care. He whooped again and threw his plaid cap up into the air. "Well," demanded Jack, "what we gonna do with this here unexpected blessing?" "What do you mean?" asked Willie. He was already having enough trouble working his way through English without losing precious time. "Blessing? Not a blessing as far as I'm concerned. Miss Williams was an okay teacher. Wish she would have stayed around and finished the job." I figured with Miss Williams already being there for 37 years that she had probably stuck with the job about as long as anyone could expect her to. But even though I felt sorry for Willie, I couldn't hide my grin. It sure did seem like a blessing. I mean, with the weather beckoning one outside all the time and all, who knew when we might have winter set in and maybe then we wouldn't see the sun again for months? We could catch up on our studying then. Well, Jack asked again, what are we doing with this here, hardship? Even Willie had a smile at that, and the first thing we knew, we were all laughing. When we finally settled down, we busied ourselves with some serious planning. I suppose I'll go on out to the farm, I said. I always do on holidays or anything. Jack lived just on the edge of town, and there weren't as many things to keep a boy busy at his place, his folks having no livestock or crops or anything. If when I go home, my pa'll want me to keep my nose in a book. Might as well be back in school, complained Jack. Fact is, I'd be better off in school. At least there we get recess. Willie gave Jack a withering look. Jack had the brains if he would just use them, and I think it bothered Willie some that he had to work so hard for his average grade, while Jack just fooled away his time and didn't even care what grade he got. Guess I'll have me plenty of good fishing time, I continued, hoping to break the tension some. We could all get together for some football, put in Willie. He loved football and was good at it, too, in spite of the fact that none of us had any equipment to play the game, and our folks were always worrying that someone might get hurt. Avery spoke up then. I've been thinking for a long time that it sure would be fun to backpack up along the creek and spend a night or two out camping. Great idea, I practically hollered. I wondered why I hadn't thought of it long ago. It surprised me some to hear Avery mention it. He had never talked about it before. I had never been on an overnight hike, and with the woods looking like they did, it sounded like a first-rate idea. Jack and Willie were about as excited as I was. Do you think our folks would let us? Asked Willie. Why not? We're already 15. About time we were allowed to do something on our own. I agreed. I suppose I would have been pressing to get the chance ages ago if I had just thought of it. Let's ask, said Jack. They can't do more than say no. The thought of them saying no just about made me feel sick inside, now that the idea had begun to work on me. They just had to say yes. They had to. Who you going to ask? Avery was saying, and I suddenly realized he was speaking to me. Huh? I grunted. You going to ask your Aunt Lou or your grandpa? I shrugged my shoulders. I don't know. I'm at Aunt Lou's right now. Think she'll let you go? I thought about it. Aunt Lou was understanding enough, but she was a bit protective as well. Would she understand how much it meant to a boy to go off camping on his own? I switched my thoughts to my grandpa. He was a swell person, about as kind a fella as a boy could want to have watching over him, but I was sure he had never thought of taking off into the hills on a camping trip, even if the fall work was all done. Seemed to me that he might favor me staying with the books as well. I don't know, I said again. Well, at least you've got a choice, said Avery. Me? I've got to convince my ma. If I can sell her on the idea, she'll work it out with Pa. One thing I knew for sure, I didn't have a ma and pa to talk it over with. Look, said Jack Barry, can you fellas come over to my house after your chores are done tonight? We got to get our heads together and plan our attack. Crazy Jack. He'd like to make everything sound like we were all in a war against our folks or something, but nevertheless, we all nodded our heads and agreed to try to get some time with one another over at Jack's house after we hauled the water and carried in the wood and coal. We parted then. I think we were all sort of holding our breaths. I looked again toward the distant woods as I swung through the gate at Aunt Lou's. Boy, did they look inviting. I could visualize, from where I was, just where the creek cut through the hills and swung around to the south. I could almost hear the rustle of the gold and red leaves and feel the gentle breeze on the skin of my cheek. A crow called, off in the distance somewhere, and I wondered why it hadn't already left for the south. Guess it just wanted to hang around and enjoy the good weather. Boy, the woods and fields really drew a body on such a day. I could hardly settle myself down of filling the wood box and the coal scuttle. Chapter 2. Pleading Our Case. I didn't say much to Aunt Lou while I wolfed down the cookies and milk she had out for me. She'd already gotten the word that Miss Williams was done, and had left just like that, and our school was without a teacher in the middle of a term. It's a shame, that's what it is.